Hi, I'm Rob from B&H, and in this video we're taking a look at the QCon Pro from Icon Digital. If you're tired of moving a mouse around on a screen and you're looking for a more intuitive, hands-on way to work with your DAW, the QCon Pro USB MIDI controller station is definitely worth consideration. The sturdy aluminum and metal chassis connects to your computer via USB and houses 9 touch-sensitive 100mm motorized faders, 8 for channels and 1 master fader. These faders give you hands-on control over the virtual faders in your DAW, and the channel faders feature 12-segment metering. In addition, it also offers 8 dual-function encoder knobs. They can be pressed for enter functions and, of course, rotated to change values. A nice touch on these are the 11-segment LEDs surrounding them to indicate the position. When you use these as panning knobs, for example, it's pretty easy to get a good idea of your panning positions at a glance, and in Pro Tools, the LED changes from red to purple when you're centered. Above the encoders is a backlit LCD display for track and parameter information. Also on board are illuminated select, mute, solo, and record ready buttons for the individual channels. On the right side of the board are various assignment, automation, and transport controls. There are zoom buttons to resize your DAW's screen and a jog wheel for fast searching through your song. At the top right, we've got a 12-segment LED that can display SMPTE or beats and measures. The QCon Pro is designed to work with any number of different DAWs. We tried it out with Pro Tools, Logic Pro 9, and Ableton Live, and it worked quite well. Mackie control is built in if you're using it with Cubase or Ableton, for example, and Mackie HUI protocol is built in for use with Pro Tools. Setting it up with the DAW of your choice is a pretty straightforward affair. When you first turn the unit on, it asks you what DAW you're using, so you'll simply cursor to the one you want. On our unit's 1.05 firmware, 6 DAWs show up, but there's also a MIDI learn mode for other DAWs, say if you want to use the QCon Pro with Sonar, for example. Let's take a look at it in action with Pro Tools. For setup, over on Pro Tools, under the Setup menu, you'll go to Peripherals, select HUI, and the QCon under the Input and Output menus, and it's an 8-channel controller, so that setting is correct, and that's it. You're good to go. Now, because the QCon Pro can work with different DAWs, the buttons on the right side of the board vary in function, and Icon has thoughtfully included some overlays, one each for Ableton Live, Pro Tools, and Samplitude. And I should also note that Samplitude 11 Silver for Windows is included with the QCon Pro. So looking at Pro Tools, we can see that the 8 faders are controlling the first 8 virtual faders. I can cursor to different channels or to different banks of channels, and of course, when I do that, you can see the motorized faders reset to reflect the tracks that they're currently assigned to. Select, mute, solo, and record ready buttons are all working. If I want to use the encoders as aux sends, I hit the corresponding A through E send button on the right for the send I want to work with, and now the encoders function as aux sends. If I hit the pan button, the encoders now function as pan pots. You can also use the encoders to change settings on your plugins. So on channel 1 here, I have an EQ on the first slot and a reverb on the second. I'll hit the plugin button, and you'll see the LCD display shows the 2 plugins I have. To alter the EQ, I simply press that encoder. Now in Pro Tools, the first 4 encoders change parameters, while the 5th is for navigation. So for example, the first encoder now changes the Q width of my low frequency band. The second controls the frequency. Also, if I press that encoder, it toggles between a bell curve and a shelving EQ, and so on. Now to go to additional pages in the EQ, I'll turn the 5th encoder. If I'd like to switch effects, I'll press the 5th encoder, and that sort of takes me back to the Insert home page. And now I'll press the 2nd encoder, which is a reverb, and now I'm ready to make adjustments on the reverb settings. Compare and bypass buttons are also handy, although sometimes the encoders function as bypass switches as well. Transport controls worked very well. In Pro Tools, the jog wheel is used for scrub mode, but in Ableton and Logic's arrangement pages, it can be used for rapid scrolling. Now, one quirk in Pro Tools is that the master fader doesn't actually control the master. Instead, the master is actually controlled by the next fader after your last track and before the auxes. For automation functions in Pro Tools, all I have to do is press the button for the mode I want to be in and press the encoder on the channels I want to work with at the same time. The touch-sensitive faders work very nicely. You can start automating levels simply by touching the fader. The motorized faders follow the automation without any issues, although if you have a lot of rides going on, the mechanical sound of the moving faders is noticeable. The QCon Pro performed very well, but there were a couple of negatives, partly on the cosmetic side. I like the rubberized motorized side panels, but on our model, the one on the right side was beginning to come unglued. The adjustable LCD also worked just fine, but looked just a little bit warped. In terms of functionality, it would have been nice to have meters on the master fader in addition to the channel faders. Also, the faders do have an 8-bit resolution, but Icon indicates you're limited to only 127 possible volume levels. Now, as I mentioned, in addition to Pro Tools, we did try it out with Logic 9 and Ableton Live. The nice thing about using the QCon Pro with Logic is you don't have to worry about an overlay since the front panel is based on Logic. At any rate, the QCon Pro performed very well with both Logic and Live. One thing you might have noticed is this big unused area on the QCon Pro. Well, it just happens to be a perfect fit for the Icon Digital UMix 1008 satellite USB audio interface. The 1008 is a 10-input, 8-output interface with 8 XLR quarter-inch combo mic or instrument inputs with individual gain and phantom power. Line level signals get plugged into the 8 TRS inputs on the back. Also on the back are 6 TRS outputs along with SPDIF in and out ports and 5-pin MIDI in and out ports. The 1008 will work as a standalone USB audio interface capable of 24-bit, 192 kHz recordings, so you don't have to use it with a QCon Pro, but the two together makes for a really nice interface controller combo. The QCon Pro even has headphone jacks in the front that function when the interface is connected. Also, if you decide you'd like some more faders to work with, you could pick up a QCon X, which will give you 8 faders, 8 encoders, along with select, record, mute, and solo buttons and the LCD screen. So hopefully that gives you some idea of what the QCon Pro USB MIDI controller is all about. I'm Rob from B&H, and thanks for watching.
Whether you're a hobbyist or a professional, B&H has the answers to your questions. Experience a world of technology at our New York City Superstore. Connect with us online or give us a call. Our staff of experts is happy to help.